Hi, I'm Ellen and today I'm going to show you how I made this cover for my hot water bottle. For my fabric I use an old shirt that I don't really wear anymore. I don't like the color that much on me, but it is really nice fabric, so I put it on my pile of things to turn into something else. Now for you, you can use any fabric you want, but I would recommend going with a very stretchy fabric. And the first step is to trace the outline of your hot water bottle. Mine is heart shaped, but any other shape will work the same way. So I'm just tracing all the way around the bottom and then going straight up from the sides. Next I'm putting in some pins to keep the two layers of the fabric together. And then I'm going to cut out the shape. And I'm cutting around 1.5 centimeters around the marking that I made, just to give me a seam allowance. Doing a little test fit, seems to be the right size. And now with the pin still in there, I'm going to sew the outline of the cover. And I'm using a stretch stitch here, which is a special setting on my sewing machine. If your sewing machine doesn't have this stitch, I recommend using a zigzag stitch instead of a straight stitch. And then to finish the edges, I'm using a zigzag stitch on both of the sides. And this is to keep the fabric from fraying. And then I'm cutting off the excess fabric very closely to this zigzag stitch. Make sure you don't actually cut through the stitching. You want it to stay there, but cut very close to it so you can get rid of all the fabric that will just start fraying anyway. Again, a little test fit, and it seems to be looking good. Now we have to finish the top. I'm just making a marking at the highest point of my hot water bottle, and I'm transferring that marking to both of the sides, and I'm cutting off the excess fabric on top, making sure I leave enough room for the seam that I'm about to make. And to make the seam, I'm folding the fabric down twice, and this will hide the raw edge of the fabric very nicely. Again, just test fitting to make sure I got the height right. Never hurts to test fit, better to find out a mistake now than after you stitched it. And it all looks good, so I'm going to stitch this top seam in place. Again, I'm using a stretch stitch, but if you don't have one, use a zigzag stitch. And now to figure out where the elastic will go. I'm using this very thin elastic. I'm just measuring how big it needs to be. And then I'm going to first sew the elastic into a loop, so I'm putting the two ends together. And I'm just making a couple of zigzag stitches back and forth. Next I'm going to mark the quarter points of this loop. I'm also marking those quarter points on my bottle, so I know which piece of the elastic needs to go where. Then I'm lining up the quarter pins on my elastic with the quarter pins on my cover, and then pinning the elastic in place on those 4 points. Now because this elastic is so small, I'm going to first just stitch it in place on those 4 points, and that will make it a lot easier for me to attach the rest of the elastic. And you can see here what that looks like. And then finally it's time to sew the elastic in place completely. And I'm using a zigzag stitch here all the way around. And what I'm doing here is I'm stretching out the elastic so that it's straight between those two quarter points. And this is where it's very handy that I have those quarter points, because now I know exactly how far to stretch my elastic. And that's it. Time to turn it the right side around and put my hot water bottle in. Now at this point I decided that the top part was a bit too big, so I decided to make 2 quick little darts along the side seams just to make it a bit smaller there. And voila, it's done!